Steve Brooke. I'm your teaching pastor here at Christ Church, and I just came out of one of those crazy weeks, right? I was invited to speak a man camp at a man camp in Central Oregon, and Noah and Grace, two of my kids, they got to come along to see friends in Portland, Oregon, where we came from, right? And plus, even I got to see family and friends that I haven't seen in a long time. Plus, as you may have known from Facebook, there was a lot of other craziness that happened in my life. Have you ever had one of those crazy weeks, right? Crazy chaotic, but also maybe crazy cool, because God was with you through it all. You know, as we enter into this new Echo series, looking into the book of Acts that Luke writes, it's called the Acts of the Apostles or the Acts of the Church. Mostly it's called the Acts of the Holy Spirit. And it opens up with one of the craziest weeks ever. Let me explain what I mean by one of the craziest weeks ever. That year, during the spring season, the Jews had 4 of their 7 feasts or festivals, and some pretty crazy stuff had already been happening in the first 3. Think about it. At the end of the Passover feast, the famous rabbi, Jesus of Nazareth, had been crucified on a cross. The next day, at the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, the day's news was that the body of the crucified Jesus had been placed and sealed in a tomb. And the next day, which is the Feast of the First Fruits, it's when Jews started planting their crops, and there was this really crazy news on that day that this Jesus actually rose from the dead. Maybe that's why Paul will later call him, the first fruits from among the dead, that's who Jesus is. Well, there was still one spring festival or feast left to happen. And it was called the Feast of Weeks. It was called that because it was later, after Passover and after the harvest got planted, a week of weeks were to pass. 7 weeks, 49 days after the crops had been planted. The Greeks called it Pentecost because it was that 50th day when the Jews' early harvest had been collected up, celebrated, and they kind of came together in Jerusalem, offered up to God in thanks and anticipation for a great year of great crops. So everybody, it's a pilgrimage festival, so everybody from everywhere was in Jerusalem for this festival of weeks. And that's why I said, after all the other crazy stuff happening, it's going to be one of the craziest weeks ever. Luke begins Acts, and you can go ahead and get out the book of Acts, chapter 1. We're going to just go ahead and dive on in. He begins Acts letting us know that after Jesus rose from the grave, he spent 40 of the next 49 days, right, leading up to Pentecost, hanging with his disciples, proving that he was alive and teaching them the new reality, the new mission, the new way to live that is coming. And there's one big topic that's on his mind. He says it right there in verse 4. On one occasion, while he was eating with his disciples, he gave them this command. Look, don't leave Jerusalem, because he had probably been telling them, it's going to be your job to go out and tell the world, right? But he says, look, don't leave Jerusalem, but wait here where you are for the gift my Father promised, which you have heard me speak plenty about as well. And that gift is the Holy Spirit. Now, have you ever had to wait for something? I think about how my crazy week started out Thursday night. Noah and Grace and I, we got on the plane, and it was scheduled to get into Portland by 10:30 at night. Perfect timing. I was a great planner. It would get us synced into the West Coast time, good night's sleep we'd have, but in Charlotte, the plane delayed 1 hour. Then 2 hours, then 3. We would not arrive into Portland until 2 in the morning. The kids would not be to their friends until 3. And I wouldn't be at the camp where I was supposed to speak at until 5 in the morning of when I'm supposed to speak. Grace is crying. Noah is frustrated. I'm anxious. The delay was incredible, and the delay just made us want to get there all the more. And the same is true with God. You see, we had been waiting as people a long time for God's Spirit. Do you know that? You see, at creation, God made us to walk and talk personally and peacefully with Him forever. But ever since our sin and disobedience messed that deal up, we have been wanting and waiting to get back to that kind of relationship again. I'd love that kind of relationship, right? Well, God's Spirit along the way would make occasional appearances to certain people, at certain places, at certain times, for certain seasons or certain tasks. It's kind of how He worked. And it helped some people at some times. So it was a really big and new deal when God's Spirit lived inside one man, fully inside one man for His whole life. And that was Jesus. Jesus spoke and lived and ministered from the Spirit of God in Him. And those around Him were blessed by being next to the Spirit of God in Him. But God's Spirit living with and in regular old people? Not yet. Nope. You see, but Jesus had been promising something. He'd been promising His disciples that an even better relationship with God was coming their way. And you're like, better than living with Jesus, right? Yeah. Because better than having God next to you is having God inside you. Better than having Him next to your life, it's having Him inside of your own life. And God inside of you, that is the Holy Spirit. He is part of the Trinity of God. That the one God exists in three unique persons or expressions there in the Bible. There's God the Father, who reveals the dad's heart in God to make a way. I'm going to make a way for people to live again in a good, eternal relationship with God again. There's the Son, God revealed in the real flesh of a real person, in the real history of a real world, with real words and real power, who died a real death as a real sacrifice and rose again in real life to be the way for that peaceful forever friendship with God to be restored. And then there's the Spirit of God, the Spirit of Christ, who is sent by God and by Jesus to be the way that the way works. He's the way that a daily, eternal, good friendship and relationship with God, with Jesus, can logistically happen. See, the Spirit of God can fit in the tiniest and most imperfect of places and all over the place. And I'm glad, because He fits into my little old imperfect heart and life and makes life way, way better for me. Because He helps me have that good, daily, eternal relationship with God, with Jesus, that me and everybody else have been deep down waiting for, because it's what we were created for. Now, he is unique, and He serves a unique purpose, the Holy Spirit does. I think it's also, though, helpful to remember that He's not like this kooky, weird thing that, from the other two either. I just try to remember He's God. He's an echo of God and Jesus. If you know God and you talk with God, you know God, you know His Spirit, and you are talking with His Spirit. If you know Jesus and talk with Jesus, you know the Spirit of Christ, and you're talking with the Spirit of Christ. He's God. He wants to live with you by living inside of you. And it's good to know what makes the Holy Spirit tick. What is it? What's that one purpose, that one main heartbeat that's driving Him? And it's this: God's Spirit wants to help you and everybody else get to know Jesus and know Him in their lives. See, during my crazy week, when I finally woke up, at the man camp on Friday, it was afternoon. I was supposed to speak that evening. And guys were already starting to arrive at the man camp. Now, I was just planning on telling my own story of how Jesus saved and changed this city boy's messed up life, but I looked out the window where I was standing, I saw guys of all ages, which was great, but most of them were wearing camo, you know what I'm saying? And quite a few with Duck Dynasty beards, I mean, full grown out, you know? And this city boy said, God, I don't know if my story is going to help these guys. God, I should have come prepared with something else than just my story. I imagine it's how the apostles felt. But Jesus promised them it was going to be okay, because with his Spirit's help, their stories would be enough to change the world. It was his plan A. No plan B, his plan A, and here's the plan. You guys are going to receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, comes to live in you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and echoing out into all Judea and echoing out into Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And I love that. He's like, hey guys, before I go, here's the plan. You have experienced me in your life, and you continue to experience me in my Spirit inside of you. And all you got to do is just share your experience with me, with others, in your circles, wherever you go, and I'll do the rest. And through all the echoes of God going out, we're going to win the world, boys. Look, he doesn't need experts. He needs you. He needs your walk with God. He needs your story. You are his eyewitness accounts. That's the Holy Spirit's purpose. That's his passion. That's his plan. Experience Jesus and share your experience. But there I was fretting with God in my room over whether to tell my story or not during my crazy week. But I didn't have anything else prepared. So Friday night, I got to telling these guys the first part of my story. And I still can't believe it. These guys would not shut up. It was like they wanted to talk on into the night about their stories. And by the end of the weekend, guys were in tears and their lives changed and decisions were being made. And it wasn't because of me. I realized what was happening. Hearing me talk about my life with God just got them thinking and talking about their life with God. Well, one of the Duck Dynasty beard guys, he said, sorry, Steve, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but Friday night I said to myself, I am not going to learn anything from this guy with the crazy hair. All the while I'm thinking, have you seen your beard, bro? Because, I don't know what you're talking about, But then you started telling your story, and it was like I was looking in a mirror. You were telling my story. See, that's what I love about the Spirit of God. City boy or country boy, Jew or Gentile, male or female, miraculous or mundane, God's Spirit wants to help everybody get the word out and help everybody get to know Jesus.